All right. All right. Hi, guys. So we're going to do some measuring work this week with your ruler. We've done some measuring with measuring cups, and we've definitely done a lot of measuring with that type of thing when it comes to baking, which is super exciting, and I've had a ton of fun doing with you guys. But I also know that you guys love to measure things with your rulers because it's pretty awesome. All right, so we're going to learn how to measure with our ruler, and then you guys have this guide to complete that's kind of just has some different objects on it for you to measure. And there's also this guy that has a bunch of different measuring things on it. We're going to learn how to do those different things. So I have this lovely sheet of paper here. It has a gigantic first part of a ruler on it because we're going to learn not just how to measure things to the 1-inch mark, but to the quarter, half, and 3/4 inch. So this is my ruler. You guys can see that it says INCH, which is inch here. There are different tools and ways to measure things. For now, we're going to focus on inches. Your ruler might have centimeters on it as well. But mine has inches. And so I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and all the way over here, 12. Hanging out over here. So when it comes to a ruler, 12 inches equals 1 foot. And so that is what you will find on most rulers is 12 inches. Some you might see 18. For the most part, for everything that we're going to use for school, it should be our 12-inch ruler here. I can measure more than 12 inches if I needed to. I could measure the size of my table here and start here at 0, put my pen at where it ends, and then I can stick my ruler to see how many more inches from where I ended. So 12 plus 3, my table would be 15 inches long. So I can measure that way with extra things. I also can measure not just in inches, but in parts of inches. So here I've got my really big ruler. To measure the quarter, half, and 3/4 inch, we're going to do some counting. You guys are also going to do some fractions work later this week that'll make this make a little bit more sense as to how it's parts of the whole. But I'm going to start at my 0, and I'm going to hop 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines in. Put a dot. And you can see that that's the same on my ruler here. My lines are just a lot smaller. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. That is going to be my 1/4 inch. Now I'm not going to write it as 25 cents or draw a quarter. It is 1/4. So I'm going to write a 1. There's 1 out of 4 parts that I'm counting right now in this inch. So if I divided my whole inch into fourths, this is what I would get. I am going to get the fractions worked out for that little bit, actually, you guys. That will help you out. And then use my dark blue. Thank you to Miss Amanda for making this all the mark. Alright, so right now what we're looking at is our whole inch if it was a circle, and 1/4 of that. So far, got this 1/4 of an inch. Then what we're going to do is we're going to count 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. We end up at this big line in the middle that doesn't have a number underneath it between 0 and 1. That is 1/2, which I could also write as 2/4. So I can put this guy here, and I've made 2/4 because I've counted 4 and 4, 2/4, or what that can also be called is 1/2, and that fits over very nicely. 2/4, 1/2. Then I'm going to count 4 more. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got 1/4, 2/4, which is also a half. Sorry, 1/4, 2/4, which is also a half. And now I have 3/4 of an inch. So I've counted to 4 one more time. So I've got that. 3/4. So 3 parts of my inch as a whole are covered, because if I drew a line, I would then have shaded in that much of my inch and that much not. So I've got, and showing our fraction in a straight line here, I color that in very quickly. I've got 3/4 colored in and 1/4 not. Now we're going to count 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that can be 4/4, or since 4 and 4 are the same number, I can see that this is all the way filled up. So it also can equal the whole number 1. And that's what we're going to see. And that's easier than going around and saying, how many apples do you have? Oh, I have 4/4 of an apple. You have 1 apple. Or I have 3/4 of my cookie left. You've eaten most of your cookie. Or you have not eaten most of your cookie. For halves, it also comes in where 2 halves make a whole. So, we'll learn a little bit more about why that's important a little bit later this week. For now, though, we're going to discuss how we can measure things that don't just meet at the inch mark, using what we know for what those lines mean. So, if I was going to measure this line right here, I'm going to scoot this guy over so my ruler has room. I don't want to start here in the middle. That would not give me an accurate measurement of how long it is. I mean, it would, but I have to do some math. So I'm going to start, and my 0 is going to be the very end of the line, not the end of my ruler, the 0. I'm going to measure in, so I've got 1 inch, 2 inches. Oh, but I don't go all the way over to 3, so I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I end up at that half line in between. So this would be 1, 2, so a 2 and a half, 1/2 inches long. 2.5 inches. And I don't have to make those bumps every time. You can while you're still learning how to measure, but I can also just look at that and know that in between, that midway point in between 2 and 3 is half. So I have 2 and a half. Then I'm going to come down here and measure this one. Again, you guys, I'm going to keep my 0 at the end, not the end of my ruler. And I have 1, 2, 3, and then, oh man, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I know if I count 1, 2, 3, 4 on my big one up here, it's 1/4. So I have 3 and 1/4 inches. Now I have a super duper long one. I'm gonna go 0 down here at the end. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh man, I have 4. And then I go past the half. So I must start at the half and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I know from up here that I've got my half, but if I have 4 marks past my half, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 3/4. So I have 4 and 3/4 of an inch, or inches. And that is how we can measure lines using those. And you guys might have to count with them for a while. That is okay. Then, if I want to measure the outside of a shape or the outside of something, I can do this. I can look at this guy, and I'm going to place my ruler along the line. So it might not be like straight across like I did here, but I'm going to put it along this line. And I have 1, and then I go to the line in midway between 1 and 2, which that big line I know is 1/2. So I have 1 and a half inches for this side of my triangle. And then I can measure, I'm going to go down and measure this other side. my 0 at the end, then I have 1, and my line ends at that midway point, 1.5 inches. All right, I have 1 line left. I wonder if it's going to be the same. Let's find out. My 0 at the end, and then I can see, oh, this one just goes to the 1, so it is 1 inch. And then I've measured around the outside of my triangle. Now, if I wanted to measure around the outside of something else, I certainly could. I could measure around the outside of my pencil box. So I could write down here, pencil box, or if I wasn't able to write it, I could draw my pencil box really fast. Got a little lid there. And I can measure around the outside of my pencil box. I can see that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it goes midway between. So it's 7.5 inches for the one side. And I'm going to draw a rectangle to help me remember. So 7.5 inches on the bottom. I'm going to measure across the top here. I've got 1, 2, 3. 3 inches across this side right here. I'm going to measure this side. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it ends at the halfway mark there. 7.5 inches up here on top. And over here, I've got this guy. 1, 2, 3 again. 3 inches. So I just measured the outside of my pencil box. If I wanted to measure how tall it was, I could do that too. I'll put this up so you guys can see. If I wanted to measure how tall it was, I'm going to lay it outside so I could do it, but if I wanted to, I could. And you know what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hang on, 7.5. So when it stands up, it is still 7.5 inches on that one side. So I could measure my pen, and I can see if I put my pen down here. It's a little tricky to get on the 0, but it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 4, 5.25 inches. So you guys can practice measuring a whole bunch of different things. What else do you think you could measure in your house? You guys could kind of do what I did here and draw around the outside of it, or if you wanted to just write the height of the pencil box, you could just do the height and write 7.5 inches. You always want to make sure you put at the end what you were measuring in, so that other people who go back to remeasure and check your work would also know that you measured it in inches. So yeah, happy measuring, you guys. Measuring around the outside of something is called measuring its perimeter, and we will talk a little bit more about that next week. Happy measuring, everybody.